Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking at conversations.
Oh, interesting.
And not just like, how was your day, but like the really good ones.
Yeah. Right, the ones that actually energized you.
Like with those people who can just talk to anybody about anything and it's fascinating.
I know exactly the kind of people you mean.
Yeah. So we're going to unlock some of those secrets, I think.
Yeah, those people who are just effortlessly charming.
Yeah.
It does seem like a gift sometimes, but I really think it is a skill that you can hone.
I agree.
And actually, a lot of your sources talk about, the psychology behind it.
Right. It's not just like, do this and you'll be charming.
Exactly.
Like, why do these things work?
Yeah.
So we've got The Art of Manliness, which I always love.
Always a good one.
The Fluent Life, and even like a piece from ABC Education, which is cool.
Yeah, that's a good mix.
Very practical advice, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so something that really jumped out at me from a lot of these sources was that listening was like...
even more important than talking.
Yeah.
Which maybe seems obvious, but when you really think about it, it's like the foundation of a good conversation.
It really is.
If you're not listening.
You can't have a conversation.
But then what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. And The Art of Manliness has this great term I love, conversational narcissism.
Oh, yeah.
And we all know those people.
We do. We all have that person in our lives.
And it's so draining.
It is.
To talk to them.
But if you think about why listening is so powerful.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to be heard and understood.
Sure.
And when you ask those thoughtful questions,
yeah.
When you really listen to people, it makes them feel valued.
Yes.
So that's huge.
Absolutely. And it's funny because, we talk about active listening.
Right.
And the Fluent Life goes into this, and it's like, it's not just being quiet, it's showing that you're engaged.
Totally.
And it's like those little things, nodding your head, eye contact, asking follow-up questions, things like, ooh, tell me more about that.
It's all about those cues that you're really paying attention.
Yes.
And I think that ties into the ABC one about putting your phone away.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We all know it. Put the phone away when you're having a conversation.
We know it, but do we do it?
Right, exactly. But if you really think about it, it boils down to being present.
Yes.
When you're putting your phone down, you're turning away from the screen and you're like, you are my focus right now.
Exactly.
And that's really powerful for people.
It's funny because we all know how annoying it is when someone's on their phone and you're trying to talk to them.
The worst.
Just like, hello. Am I not interesting enough?
Exactly. Whatever's on that screen is more interesting than me.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Lesson 1, ditch the distractions.
Yeah. Put the phone away. I love it. Okay. The Art of Manliness also had, those classic conversational do's and don'ts.
Oh, yeah. Always good advice.
Yeah.
Always good to brush up on those.
Yeah. So let's dive into those. What were some of the do's that stood out to you?
Well, a few of them. Be prepared with a few topics,
Yeah.
Have something you can bring up.
Have something to talk about.
Tailor the conversation to who you're talking to.
That makes sense.
Take turns speaking.
Oh, important.
And of course, think before you speak.
Oh, if only.
Right. I know. Everybody has had those moments where you wish you could just take it back.
All the time.
But yeah, I think those are some really good do's.
Yeah. And what about that tailoring thing? What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not about avoiding certain topics altogether.
Okay.
But being sensitive to the context and who you're with. The Art of Manliness uses the example of politics.
Okay.
Having a heated political debate might be fine with close friends at your weekly poker night.
Yeah.
But maybe not with new acquaintances at a dinner party.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. Context is key.
Context is key. Okay. Now let's get to the good stuff, the don'ts, the ones that make us all cringe.
Okay, let's do it. So, interrupting, one-upping, oversharing.
Oh, the oversharers.
Mm-hmm.
I have a story. I met someone at a party one time, and within 5 minutes.
Oh, no. Let me guess. They unloaded their entire life story.
Yes.
Relationship drama, financial woes, maybe even some childhood trauma.
All of it. It was like, skip the small talk. Let's go straight to emotional baggage claim.
I don't blame you.
I politely excused myself to the snack table, I think it was.
Yeah. Good move. Good move.
Yeah. So speaking of interrupting, Esquire etiquette actually makes a really interesting point about two types of interrupting.
Oh, tell me more about this.
So there's the obvious one, like mid-sentence interruption, which is just rude.
Right.
But then they talk about like the tangent-based interruption, which is when you kind of derail the conversation with a, that reminds me of, or a, by the way, and you just completely hijacks like the speaker's train of thought,
It's so true.
which I'm so guilty of.
Oh, me too. Me too. I feel like I do that all the time.
I know. It's so interesting because it's like even a well-intentioned interruption can still disrupt the flow and make the other person feel unheard.
It's true. It really is about being aware of those more subtle interruptions.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about listening, some do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
But now let's move on to something I think is really fascinating.
Okay.
Nonverbal communication.
Uh-huh.
Because it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
I love this. This is my favorite part.
I know, me too. So think about it like eye contact,
Yes.
gestures, body language, even facial expressions, all of that plays into...
And how your message is received.
Yeah.
Like sometimes even more than the words themselves.
Right, exactly.
It's so powerful.
It is. And The Fluent Life tells this story about this woman named Jane. And she goes to this business meeting and she's super nervous.
Okay.
And her body language just totally gives her away, like avoiding eye contact,
Oh.
arms crossed, like practically shrinking in her chair.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah. And then like people end up seeing her as disinterested and unapproachable,
Wow.
even though she's like brilliant and has all these ideals.
Wow. It's like her body language is speaking for her.
Exactly. And it's like, it's a classic example of actions speaking louder than words.
Totally.
And I think it's so interesting how that plays out in everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever felt self-conscious about like your own nonverbal cues?
All the time. Like, am I coming across as too eager, too aloof? What do I do with my hands?
I know. What do I do with my hands?
It's a struggle.
Then the Fluent Life brings up another really good point, which is like all these nonverbal cues.
It can be totally different in different cultures.
Yes.
Like what's polite eye contact in the US might be aggressive in Japan.
Exactly. And they have some great examples like personal space,
Oh, yeah.
eye contact,
Totally different.
and even hand gestures can mean completely different things in different cultures.
You got to be careful.
You really do, yeah.
Like awareness and adaptation are key to avoid unintended offense.
I love that. Yeah.
Right.
Be mindful.
Be mindful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Like, it's so important to be aware of those differences so we can make sure our message is received the way we intend it, you know?
That's so true. It reminds me of that saying, like, what's normal in one country can be rude in another.
Right.
It's not even just speaking the same language. It's like understanding all those unspoken rules.
Yeah, and the nuances. And that's where observation becomes so important, like paying attention to how people interact in different settings. What are the topics they talk about? What kind of humor do they use? You know, even their nonverbal cues, all of those things. And like the more you observe, the better you'll be at adapting your own communication style to kind of fit in, you know?
Almost like being a conversational chameleon.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. A conversational chameleon. That's perfect. And it emphasizes that good conversation isn't about being someone you're not. It's like be authentic, but also respectful and mindful of the other person's perspective, right?
That sweet spot. Like
Yeah.
being genuine, but also adaptable. Okay, I'm curious. What were some of the other conversational like don'ts that stood out to you from these sources?
Yeah, so we already talked about, you know, interrupting and one-upping and dominating the conversation. But one that I think is particularly important, especially these days, is avoiding offensive language.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it might seem obvious, but things like racial slurs or derogatory terms, anything that demeans or belittles another person, it just has no place in a respectful conversation, you
True.
know?
Like, it's not even just avoiding like outright offensive language, but also being mindful of the potential impact of our words, even if we don't mean any harm. You know, like some people can be really easily offended, and being sensitive to that is so important.
It really is. And I think it ties back to that tailoring the conversation thing. Like what might be playful banter with close friends could be totally insensitive in another context.
Right.
So, you know, we have to be aware of those social dynamics and adjust accordingly.
Read the room.
Exactly. Read the room, understand the situation, and adapt. I feel like we're seeing a theme here. A good conversation is about being mindful.
I think you're right. Mindful of the other person,
Yeah.
the context, the impact of our words, like it's all connected.
It is. You hit the nail on the head. Mindfulness is at the heart of it all. Being present in the moment, paying attention to those subtle cues, and responding in a way that builds connection and understanding.
Yeah. Beautifully put. Now, before we wrap up, let's go back to that practicing thing we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
One of your sources suggested immersing yourself in English media as a way to practice. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great strategy. When you watch movies or TV shows in English, you're not just passively absorbing the language, but you're actively engaging with it. You're hearing different accents, different conversational styles. You're even like learning different ways to express emotions. And it's like a masterclass in real world English conversation.
Oh, that's a great way to put it, a masterclass. And it's not limited to just movies and shows either. Like you can listen to podcasts, read books and articles, even just have like online conversations.
Yeah, anything you can get your hands on.
The key is to find something you enjoy.
For sure. Something that keeps you motivated and coming back for more.
Exactly. Because the beauty of practicing through immersion is that it's fun. You're not stuck with like grammar rules and vocab lists.
Right.
You're experiencing the language in a natural and engaging way.
And the more you practice, the more confident you become.
Totally.
You start understanding more, speaking more fluently, expressing yourself more easily. It's like this positive feedback loop.
It is.
No, it really is. And one thing that I think can really accelerate your progress is practicing with native English speakers. So like find a language partner, join a conversation group, or even just chat online. Like the more you interact with native speakers, the faster you'll pick up those subtle nuances that we were talking about.
That's such a good tip. And it's not even just practicing with native speakers, but also like being open to feedback from them.
Yeah, ask them to point out mistakes or areas where you can improve.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because feedback is essential.
It is.
For growth. But remember, like it's not about being perfect.
It's about progress.
It's about progress.
Yeah.
So celebrate those little victories, those moments when you realize you're understanding more, speaking more confidently, you're expressing yourself more clearly. Like enjoy that.
Let's celebrate.
Embrace the journey, the ups and downs, the successes, the stumbles. But like most importantly, enjoy the process.
Yeah, learning a language should be an adventure.
Yes.
Like a journey of discovery.
Totally. Oh, before we move on, I wanted to touch on something else that came up. The role of confidence in conversation. Speak English with Tavani mentioned that, confidence is key to successful conversations.
It's so true. Confidence is like a magnet. When you believe in yourself and you feel comfortable expressing your thoughts and ideas, people are naturally drawn to you. They want to hear what you have to say.
Right. And it's not about being like arrogant or overbearing.
No, not at all.
It's about having that self-assurance, like knowing your voice matters.
Yeah, and confidence is something that you can build over time.
I'm sure.
The more you practice, the more you put yourself out there, the more confident you become. It's another one of those positive feedback loops.
It is. It is. So it's about taking risks, stepping outside your comfort zone, and embracing those opportunities to learn and grow.
Absolutely. And remember, confidence is contagious.
Ooh, I like that.
So when you exude confidence, you inspire others to feel more confident too. It creates this like really positive and uplifting dynamic.
So it's not just about improving our own communication. It's about creating like a more positive and confident communication culture for everyone.
Exactly. And this brings us back to mindfulness. When we're mindful of our communication style, when we're aware of how our words and actions are impacting others, we naturally become more confident and engaging.
A holistic approach, like working on ourselves internally and externally to become the best communicators we could be.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And the beautiful thing is that communication is a lifelong journey.
It is.
There's always something new to learn, always room to improve.
And that's what makes it exciting. To all our listeners, I encourage you to embrace this journey, experiment with all the tips we've discussed today, and most importantly, have fun.
Yes, have fun, be yourself, and watch your conversational skills soar.
So we've covered so much in this deep dive. We talk about listening, all those nonverbal cues, the back and forth of conversation, even being aware of different cultures. But there's one more thing from your sources that I want to highlight.
Oh, okay, what's that?
It's not so much a tip, more like a mindset shift. The Art of Manliness talked about, like embracing your natural conversational style, like being authentic.
Yeah, I love that.
Comfortable with who you are, letting your personality shine through.
It's so true because it's easy to get caught up in all the rules, and forget to just be yourself.
Exactly. Like trying to fit into some mold of the perfect conversationalist when really we should just trust our instincts.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this. Think about the people that you love talking to.
Yes.
The ones that make you feel like comfortable and engaged.
Yeah.
they're usually the ones who are just being themselves. They're not trying to impress anyone. They're not putting on a show. They're just genuine.
It's so true. And that's what makes them so magnetic.
Exactly. It's that authenticity, that spark of individuality that makes a conversation memorable.
Really does. I feel like we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I think so too.
Any final words of wisdom from you before we sign off?
Just remember that conversation is a gift. It's a way to connect with others, to share ideas, to learn, and to grow. So embrace it. Be curious, be kind, be yourself, and watch your conversations transform from ordinary exchanges into really extraordinary experiences.
Beautifully said. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the art of conversation.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you learned some valuable insights and feel inspired to level up your own conversational skills.
And keep those conversations flowing.
Yes. Until next time.